You're about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
Welcome back to the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877-Dr. Dahlia, 1-877-DOCDALI. So in breaking news today, the Supreme Court has ruled against Trump as it pertains to tariffs. And it doesn't necessarily say he can't tariff. It doesn't necessarily say he has to pay all the money back. But in terms of the executive power that he has, they disagreed with Trump's use of an emergency act, to be able to use IEPA in order, if I'm pronouncing that right, IEPA, in order to be able to do reciprocal tariffs. Tariffs have been something that was the initial characteristic of Trump's second term, in that when he, showed the public that we were paying much more in tariffs than other countries, and other countries were charging us more than we were charging them, that started to get the public going, okay, wait a second, that's not cool. All right, that's not cool at all. Now, of course, when I was looking at this, I was like, well, then Congress messed up. That was, it shouldn't be like this. How did this happen? As much as a lot of people were blaming Biden, this was a congressional thing, because Congress is the one that really kind of manages the tariffs type of thing. They're the ones that really hold that sort of control. And so I was wondering if it was going to take Congress to fix it. So according to the Supreme Court, they say that that's kind of what has to happen. In a 6-3 decision, majority against the Trump administration, Justices Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, and Brett Kavanaugh had dissented. The Chief Justice John Roberts wrote for the majority, the framers gave the power to, quote, Congress alone, notwithstanding the obvious foreign affairs implications on tariffs. And whatever may be said of other powers that implicate foreign affairs, we would not expect Congress to relinquish its tariff power through vague language or without careful limits. I know, see, that's the thing with judges and legalese. The conversation. So basically he's saying the Congress wouldn't have allowed this is something that the framers want to make sure Congress had control over. Roberts noted that Trump used two words that are separated by 16 others in the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA, IEEPA, the regulated importation, to justify that he had the independent power to impose tariffs on imports from any country or any product at any rate for any amount of time. Roberts said those two words that were separated by 16 others, quote, those words cannot bear such weight. So the oral arguments happened for this in November. I know Americans were expecting to see some of the money back, because I think Trump brought in billions from the tariffs that got imposed on these other countries. And so we were all supposed to be getting checks back and things like that, getting some of our money back. We didn't get that back yet because they were waiting to see what happened on this ruling. And so because of our trade deficit, because of us getting, shall we say, screwed by other countries, because Trump felt that tariffs could then thwart wars if we are able to, I don't want to use the word manipulate, but coerce countries to, back off what they're doing, or whatever, rather, in World War II days, it was all about embargoes. Now it's about tariffs. We can, through a tariff, prevent the need for war by saying, look, you screw with us, you're just going to have to pay us more. And so even though the idea of us getting screwed over by other countries is something that I think bipartisanly people can get behind, what they couldn't get behind is if this really is Congress's job and not Trump's job. Again, my question is how did Congress let this happen? I understand Trump wants to go in and fix a lot of things, but there's only so much the Constitution allows him to do. And that's why the Constitution was brilliantly written. So now people are like, well, what happens? Does he have to pay all the money back? From what I understand, no. Trump still has the ability, right, to still impose certain tariffs. Now, I'm no tariff expert. I'm just here to kind of report the news. But interestingly, there are other things they can do rather than using a 1970s emergency statute or whatever. And so, according to NPR, they say that there's, and I apologize, let me pull this up really quickly. They say Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974 allows the president to impose tariffs to address trade deficits, but those tariffs are limited to 15% and can only be imposed for 150 days. So we have huge trade deficits, and they do need to be addressed. It's just, what power does the president have, and then what power does Congress have? Congress needs to get their ass in gear. That's what it means, but it might not happen. They also say that Section 301 of the 1974 Trade Act, or Section 232, for those of us who are very well versed on these trade acts, or of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, does allow the president to impose tariffs, but only after a fact-finding by the U.S. Trade Representative and Commerce Department, respectively. So Trump relied on these sections during his first term in the White House, but he wasn't able to increase, to the degree that he did. The what he noticed in the first term didn't fix the trade deficit problem. It didn't fix the deficit problem. It didn't fix the other countries screwing us over. So he comes back in saying, okay, we're going to fix this. And I think, like I said, bipartisanly, a lot of people agree that we should not be screwed. Just Congress needs to take over. So does all this money have to be given back? No, because not all of the taxes or the tariffs were deemed by SCOTUS inappropriate or illegal. Many of these are still allowed. It's just now Trump has to decide if he's going to have, work with Congress to, impose, tariffs on countries that are, not, again, the idea of reciprocal tariffs was not an equal reciprocal, because as the administration had said, if they actually taxed some of these countries, the 80 or 90% that we're getting taxed, then they'd go bankrupt. So it was less than that. But it's going to take Congress to have to say, yeah, this isn't right. Like what Trump is doing with the prescription medications, telling pharmaceutical companies, look, you can't charge us more than you charge the UK or Mexico or so. SCOTUS is saying the way he's doing it can't be. So he's got to find another way, or doesn't happen, and we just continue to pay higher tariffs to other countries. 1-877-Doc-Dolly, don't go away. Dr. Dahlia here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Hi, it's Mark Falter, host of the Financial Fitness Show. I strongly believe that no one should ever pay 1 penny more in taxes than they are legally obligated. Unfortunately, for most hardworking Americans, this just isn't the case. Why? Because most people spend more time planning next weekend's getaway than trying to ensure they're going to pay less in taxes. My financial fitness team has put together some materials that I know are going to help you. It's the Tax Savings Kit. Tax Savings Kit includes 3 things: free tax analysis, top 10 ways to pay less in taxes, and an investor's guide to taxes. Now, how do you get it? Simple. 866-764-2635. Again, 866-764-2635. I'm Mark Falter. This is Financial Fitness, making personal finance profitable.
Welcome back to the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X, the Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, the Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. I'm really, really sorry about my allergies, people. Man, I did. I took medication. I did. I took something this morning. Didn't work. Some antihistamine over the counter. So this story caught my eye. There was a teacher who not only identified as transgender, but identified as a wolf. And this teacher apparently was in charge of kindergarten and pre-K children. And the teacher went by the names Lilith Death Howl and Artemis Death Howl. And apparently the teacher was accused of telling these young students that he turns into a wolf and then asks them to howl like wolves. The parents interpreted this behavior as them participating in a sexual fetish. Now, there's been no allegations that the teacher necessarily engaged in sexual activity, but parents thought that this was a little concerning. When kids were coming home, one parent said that the daughter said, "Mommy, I'm scared. He's going to come eat me." The teacher claimed they turned into a wolf at night. Now, apparently this was at, let me see, the Mildred Pool Elementary School, or the DODEA America's Mid-Atlantic District. And according to Pete Hegseth, the quote-unquote wolf was fired 2 weeks ago. A group of military families at Fort Bragg was expressing deep concern, according to CBN News, about a teacher at their school who identified as a transgender wolf. And so, according to Pete Hegseth, that teacher no longer teaches at Fort Bragg. So, one thing that has been brought up is if Trump finishes his term and J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio or whoever doesn't then get elected, and it goes back to a Biden-esque or Ocasio-Cortez or Gavin Newsom or whatever, are the changes that brought forth what we're seeing, kind of currently, where, you have teachers, not all of them, but some of them bringing up anal beads and things like that to our students. Is that going to come back? And so, parents have power. Having had transgender patients and individuals in our extended family, the average transgender individual is very private and, about their, who they are and what they like. If you really, really look at transgenderism, they don't want to be walking down the street and people say, "Oh, you're transgender." They want to walk down the street and people say you're a woman or you're a man. The true gender dysphoria patients want to be a part of the other gender and just go on living like they're a part of that gender. That's the true purest form. They don't want signs and lights and arrows going, this person is changing. Now, for some people, it's pretty obvious they are. But, when it's you keep it private. Same thing with your sexual acclivity or your what you prefer sexually. That's something you keep private. Whether you're straight, gay, bisexual, asexual, pansexual, your sexual choices are your own. It is kind of interesting how you hear people very open about who they are. And maybe it's because, if you're a celebrity, people are going to see who you're holding hands with or who you're making out with. But I mean, for me, yes, I'm married and people know that I'm married to him, so they could assume I'm heterosexual, but I don't necessarily kiss or grope or do things in public because that part is a private aspect. And so with teachers, they could be who they want to be, but you don't involve others. Your choices are your own, and what is taught in the classroom is student-centered. It's not about who you are. I taught for years. I taught Sunday school. I've taught kids of a variety of ages. I've guest lectured, and then I taught medical students. And it was very obvious and common sense that you don't go in there and you teach whatever you want to teach. I mean, your job is to teach what needs to be taught, what the students need to learn. Now, over time, teachers have started to say, look, we're going to infuse this. It's my classroom. I'm in charge. And the narcissism that ends up happening because you have a captive audience. The audience is younger than you. They need you. You're in a position of power and authority and academic superiority that we're seeing teachers take advantage. I saw teachers I worked with take advantage, and I'm like, oh, no, that's not right. There was a professor that didn't want girls to wear pants. I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah, girls should wear skirts. And these students were coming up to me, and then one day they all wore, and I was like, that's flipping crazy. What if you don't shave your legs one day? I wear pants all the time. What are you talking about? And so all the female students wore pants one day to protest this doctor where we're all going to wear. I mean, it was, and so, it's sad that you have some teachers put their beliefs first. And if your pre-K students are supposed to be learning how to read, how to, now where this happens is the creativity. Like, you're watching figure skating, you got the technical side, you got the artistic side. All right. Teachers get that latitude when there's not too much latitude, but they get latitude with the creativity side of things. So, okay, you're teaching them math, you're teaching them, but in order to teach, how are you going to engage them? So the engagement part is that's where these, unfortunately, that's where some teachers get themselves into trouble. Okay, a good teacher can engage them without having to bring up, socio-sexual identifications and things like that. They don't necessarily have to do that. And when you tell a child that you're a wolf and there's no biological or scientific explanation for that, then you're not teaching the kids the basics and what they need to be taught. There's a lot of debate on what should be happening in terms of the Department of Education. I like states' rights. I like the feds out of it because obviously the feds didn't do a good job because a lot of these students are failing and they aren't proficient. But then on the other end, I mean, who is overseeing what the heck is going on and making sure that the kids are learning? Now, the reason why the Department of Education is getting dismantled is because they didn't do that. But I'm a little mixed on that because somebody needs to make sure and hold school districts accountable and ensure that, kids are actually getting, taught math, reading, science, etc. And not, having to kind of question, why their teacher wants to pee in a potty box or lift their leg on a fire hydrant, and growl. So, if, let's say, the U.S. education system, continues to, shall we say, deteriorate, parents have the choice. And now with homeschooling, apparently we're being told that in 2025, more than 3.7 million children in the United States are possibly homeschooled. Now, I think there's about 65 million kids. So the majority are still in school. And I don't want to see kids, all these kids homeschooled. I mean, our taxes are going to public schools. I did really well in public schools. But, if parents aren't feeling like these kids are learning what they need to learn, you're going to see parents say, no, I don't want my kid thinking the teacher is a wolf. And, it's, yeah. And so, it's a tough topic because, I really understand how if somebody, wants to be with the person they love and they may want to have their partner, come and teach the kids. And I mean, I was in Sunday school and I had my boyfriend come, and talk to the students, and they loved that. They loved guest speakers. And I get that. And, and they might not approve of who I'm dating. He's too tall. He's this. Or if I had been dating somebody else or a female, and you're allowed to have guest speakers and you're allowed to be with who you want to be. But that doesn't go into the curriculum. You don't necessarily, you take away from what they're supposed to be learning from the academics to then bring up your personal, situation. Or, do I talk to my students about my husband? No, I talk to you guys about it, though. 1-877-TALK-DOLLY. Don't go away.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems and their solutions. For example,
diesel fuel cetane levels.
in many states, the cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts. Due to a cleaner burn, there are less hydrocarbons and particulate matter in your exhaust. This reduces the blockage of your diesel particulate filter. Using Diesel Extreme generates 83% less DPF regeneration. The 6-in-1 Diesel Extreme formula also includes the most concentrated detergent on the market, lubricity enhancer, water demulsifier, rust and corrosion inhibitors, and a fuel stabilizer.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret.
Powered by science.
All right, welcome back to the Dr. Dolly Show. 1-877-Doc-Dolly, 1-877-DOCDALI. I'm really sick of my allergies. These are so bad. Okay, allergy season usually doesn't start till later in the spring, and I'm really struggling today. And so we'll talk about allergies. I don't want to talk about allergies as soon. Just my nose is so runny, so I really apologize if there's any boogers that come out. But, oh, man, this is bad. Okay, so allergies are a defense mechanism. We talk about this every year. Gosh, this is so bad. And your body does not want pollen. It doesn't want mold. It doesn't want dust. So as a response, it sneezes it out or it coughs it out. And what makes things complicated, like February, is that we have flu still spiking, flu A and flu B. We have COVID. We have people getting bacterial sinus infections, viral sinus infections. And now on top of that, now we got sneezing and coughing. And I'll tell you guys how to tell the difference. But usually we don't see allergy season till the blooms, now I live in Southern Nevada and we just had a little snowstorm. Yeah, nothing stuck, but I posted a video of the snow yesterday. It was really, really cool. I mean, there's just like little flutters and powdered sugar type stuff. I'm going to go check out the mountains this weekend because there's some really, really beautiful snow on the mountains. And I kind of live at a higher elevation in the city, so I get some of these flutters. But it was actually some real snow that came down yesterday. So I was really happy about that. But it was so windy. And with these winds, unfortunately, I don't know when it's allergy season until I can't breathe and I am like always sneezing. And as you guys have heard, it's been pretty rough. So what kind of happens this time of year? So you can still have allergies throughout the winter, definitely have allergies in the fall. Those of you with asthma, you know almost too well that you could have recurrences in the fall or recurrences in the spring because of the different allergens. But actually tree pollens can hit hard this time of year. And so January, February, a lot of times we'll see tree pollens. Then I think come the grass pollens that start to rise in February, March. And then the weed pollens join the party by the spring, extend through the summer and fall. And ragweed is notorious for causing fall allergies. And that can begin in mid-August and extend to mid-November. But allergy season usually starts in the spring and it's supposed to end by, late fall. But it's starting early. So it's an immune response, okay? You could have allergies to somebody's blood. That's why we got to match your blood type. You could have allergies to mold, pollen, dust, chemicals, antibiotics, medications, perfumes, dander, anything like that. And so your body identifies the intruder, and then your IgE antibodies will activate mast cells in the tissue and basophils in the blood. When these cells get activated, they then release a whole bunch of different substances to help protect your body. Histamines, leukotrienes, cytokines. And so your body is coughing and sneezing and tearing to get everything out. So what are the symptoms? Well, sneezing, coughing, eye itchiness, eye tearing, your throat feeling scratchy, runny nose, itchy skin. You could get a rash. You could get fatigue. You could get congestion. See, people say, well, I'm tired, so it must be flu. Yeah, you do get fatigue with flu. But if you're like me, up all night because I've been sneezing or my nose is dripping and I'm not getting good sleep and I'm not, I'm going to be tired. I'm going to be tired the next day. So how do, the allergies differ from a cold? If you're wheezing and if you're coughing and you're sneezing, how do you know it's allergies versus a cold or COVID or flu? Well, with allergies, there's predictability and it's cyclical. And so, as opposed to, like a cold or flu, with a cold, colds are a little different, because you'll start feeling sick. You might start feeling it in the throat. Then you might start getting congestion. Then you might start getting cough, and then you might kind of feel a little malaise. Maybe you'll have a low-grade fever, maybe not, and you just kind of feel crummy. And, it could go in steps, evolve, and then end in about 5, 7, 10 days. Flu, on the other hand, your symptoms hit you really hard. You might start out feeling a little bit off, and then all of a sudden your viral load spikes, and then everything hits, and you got cough and fever and body aches, and fever's a biggie. Headaches. I mean, just everything all at once. Plus, some of your mucus might not be clear and might start to change color. COVID, a little bit between a cold and flu, where with COVID, it might start off looking like a cold and then kind of hit you hard and then wax and wane. And as opposed to you feeling better, in 5 to 10 days, like with flu, most people are better by day 7 with flu. COVID could go on for weeks. But with COVID, you can get a fever. Sometimes you can't. You might lose your taste or smell. You might not. You might have yellow or green nasal discharge. You might not, and so COVID, depending on the strain, could cause different symptoms, but you feel sick. With allergies, it's different. With allergies, you feel like you're just not in control of your sneezing, of your cough, and you have repetition in a way. So yeah, you might sneeze a lot with a cold and all that, but eventually that ends. Not with allergies. It just keeps going. And, here you are on week 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. And then, or you go out, you're feeling good, okay, I'm going to go walk the dog. I'm going to go do a workout. I'm going to go play pickleball. You go outside, you come back, and then now you're just all puffy and you're just all, and so you could almost predict that you're going to feel bad or you're going to get the symptoms. And so usually with allergies, you don't get a fever. True, the cytokines and the leukotrienes and the histamines, you think it might kind of warm you up a little bit, but not to the degree that you would see with flu or COVID. So usually no fever, your nasal discharge, your tears are clear. You really wouldn't be too goopy. Now, some people say, yeah, with their allergies, they get goop in the morning. Yes, you can get goop in the morning because of the dehydration. And you can get mucus and eye boogers with allergies. But in terms of purulent eye discharge, you don't necessarily see that with allergies. And so, I always kind of talk about this. People then say, well, good. Well, if it's allergies, then I don't have to worry. I don't have to get them treated. You do, because if you have asthma or COPD or you have chronic bronchitis, these allergies can unfortunately wake up the sleeping giant as opposed to other things. If you suffer from chronic sinus infections, you're going to start feeling that pain and that pressure. If you suffer from migraines and headaches, I've had a headache every day now, and it's not a cold or flu headache. It's because I've been sneezing and sneezing and sneezing and coughing, and my brain is probably bouncing around. Not to mention I'm getting dehydrated. I'm not drinking enough water for what I'm sneezing and dripping out. So don't think just because it's a headache, it's not allergies. I mean, obviously rule out flu and COVID and those kinds of things, but you can get a headache with allergies too. Absolutely. So, how do people get sick? And people will say, yeah, my allergies turned into a sinus infection. Well, technically your allergies are, preventing you from having a bacterial infection because you're spewing things out. However, if you do what I did today, where I took an antihistamine to dry me up, and then what's going to happen is my nasal sediment discharge is going to now be like sticky dough because it's not running out. Now, rather than it being clear and liquidy and thin, it's going to become more viscous and thick. Well, then it could be trapping bacteria or trapping viruses and allowing there to be more of now this landscape for viruses and bacteria to take over. A lot of people say, I had allergies and now I have a sinus infection. Is it a viral sinus infection? Is it a bacterial sinus infection? Now, difference between viral and bacterial sinus infections is with bacterial sinus infections, bacteria set up shop and divide, in one area. You might get a fever and it's more localized, whereas your viral sinus infection will come with a whole bunch of other symptoms. But still, for a lot of us, we're like, I just want to treat it. I don't care. I just feel bad. But yeah, so if you have allergies, there's a lot of things we could do. We'll talk about later in the show. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Don't go away. Hi guys, Dr. Dahlia here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping. Addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdahlia.com. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Hey, America. How tired are you of mainstream corporate media's biased narratives and manipulated news? Their dishonesty and attempts to influence this generation have been exposed, put on display for anyone who's even half paying attention. But the New American Magazine has been an honest source of news and commentary for over 50 years. This is your opportunity to receive this stalwart of principled journalism at a deep discount. Picture a beautifully published magazine arriving at your doorstep twice a month, packed with insightful stories written with integrity. It's also available digitally on the New American's mobile app. Get up to speed with intelligent coverage from a freedom perspective. Right now, for a limited time, the New American is available to radio listeners at a 25% discount on a new subscription. Visit thenewamerican.com/radio25 and receive 25% off. Subscribe today at thenewamerican.com/radio25.
You're back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. I'm sorry, a sneeze is supposed to come. If it does come and I get quiet, I'm okay. It just sneeze. I hate the fact that it takes so long for a sneeze to come. It's like, just sneeze. Just get it out. Whatever. Anyway, this story caught my eye. There was a couple who visited the U.S., had a baby here when the baby was born prematurely, and ended up facing a $200,000 medical bill. They had travel insurance, which was supposed to cover her pregnancy, but unfortunately, for a period of time, insurance company went back and forth with them, From what I understand, they are going to help cover it. But this made national and international headlines. And I just want to talk about it really quickly. So musicians Issy Ferris from Cornwall and Archie Sylvester from Somerset, they perform as a folk duo, Ferris and Sylvester. Apparently they were on tour in Nashville, and Izzy was pregnant at the time, and she ended up coming down with preeclampsia. With preeclampsia, the baby could be at very, very high risk. This could affect blood pressure, kidneys of the mom, and we sometimes have to emergently induce labor. And so the baby was born 7 weeks early. Now, at 33 weeks gestation, the lungs are not completely autonomous or independent. And so oftentimes the baby will have to be in the NICU. I mean, I gave birth to a baby 36 weeks old. We had to induce my second one because he wasn't growing anymore in the womb after a month. And so, I wanted him to bake and cook a little longer. And so we gave birth to him at about 36 weeks. And thank God he was okay. We checked. I had an amniocentesis where they had to stick a needle in my stomach to grab amniotic fluid from the uterus. And then they checked to make sure there was enough surfactant for the baby's lungs to be mature enough. And thank God he did good. They just had to watch him for a day or so. And he came home with mommy. But when you give birth to a child who's 33 weeks gestation, it could still be very, very touch and go. So they had their baby, or the baby was born in an American hospital, and Zurich Insurance Group, who was their insurance, apparently refused to uphold the policy and cover their costs, according to BBC News, because the baby was not named in the document. Well, because the baby was unborn, the baby didn't have a name. So this went on for 9 months. It was a 9-month legal battle. Zurich reversed its decision, told the BBC News it was sorry for the stress it caused, and I don't know exactly how much they covered of it, but they did seem to cover it. Now, apparently Ferris and Sylvester live in Frome. I believe that's in England. And they had been on summer tour with their band. It included a 4-day stint in Nashville. So once the baby was okay, actually she was at 33 weeks pregnancy. This is actually very interesting. She was 33 weeks pregnant with their first child, and her midwife and GP gave her the all clear to travel internationally. Now, I was told in my don't travel in your third trimester. Now, I know some people say, well, that was archaic. I mean, if you need to travel and you're in your third trimester, 5 weeks plus, you should be able to do it. But no, I did not travel. And the reason why you don't travel is because of preeclampsia or preterm labor or risk of blood clots. Pregnant women are at higher risk of blood clots. The last thing you want to do is sit on a plane. Now, did I work every day up until the point giving labor? Absolutely, I did, but I didn't travel. So I do find this fascinating that her midwife and her family physician or general practitioner said it was okay for her to travel. That is kind of interesting. But she said she was only 25. She had never been ill her whole life. It was a big opportunity. So the advice she was given by her doctor or by her midwife and by her GP was, you're perfectly healthy, so there's not really a reason not to do it. See, I disagree with that. That was, I think that was kind of careless. I mean, being on tour is already pretty, stressful, let alone, to travel internationally in your third trimester. So Sylvester said the couple made 100% sure that she was insured to be pregnant, and any complications involving pregnancy above, whilst we were abroad, were covered. At least to our understanding, we would never have gone otherwise. But then I guess 2 days in, she developed preeclampsia. It could obviously lead to organ failure. So the baby had to be delivered 7 weeks before his due date. Baby boy's name is Lucky. The consultant came in and said, this looks serious. You're not going anywhere. Your baby's going to be born in America. So baby was delivered safely. No, I don't think this was planned. I really think this was all, an accident. Okay, I know a lot of people are like, now they got, yeah. But the baby was delivered safely, had to spend 3 weeks in NICU, intensive care, for neonatals. And then the family ended up, they actually, the husband and wife ended up getting Sylvester proposed, and then they got married in Nashville. So the mom and the baby were deemed well enough to fly home. And so a lot of people are talking about $200,000. $200,000. And well, I was actually surprised. Like, I know this isn't going to be popular to say, but I was surprised it only came to $200,000. 3 weeks in a neonatal ICU, preterm labor, making sure mom doesn't go into organ failure. It's expensive. It takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot. I don't want to see bills for $200,000. Trust me, I don't. But that doesn't surprise me when you have a neonatal ICU stay. It's expensive. The nurses are expensive. The doctors are expensive. The equipment is expensive. The care, the testing. And so they basically allowed a baby who would have never been able to live in caveman days, they allowed a baby to be able to grow outside the womb and finish its fetal period outside postnatally, and then be able to be safe enough to take an international flight. To be honest, I'm really surprised that it was 200 and not more. However, not surprised that insurance companies try to get out of it. So it did take 9 months of legal back and forth. And I guess the Zurich Insurance Company told BBC News, "We're deeply sorry for the stress this caused Mr. and Mrs. Sylvester and baby Lucky, during which was already a traumatic experience of preeclampsia, premature birth. While Issy's claim was fully covered, questions were initially raised around Lucky's costs because the original policy didn't clearly address births after 32 weeks. We've now strengthened and clarified our wording and guidance so other families traveling abroad at this stage of pregnancy do not have to go through this experience." So, it kind of reminds us that you need to read the fine print. I'm not blaming the couple, just in general. When you have an insurance policy, I can't tell you how many times the fine print. I go to the pharmacy or we go to the hospital and we're like, "Don't, really? I thought Obamacare was supposed to cover colonoscopies and mammograms. Why do I have a bill?" You got to read the fine print. They only cover the basic screening. Nobody orders those basic screenings anymore. They do, they do a sigmoidoscopy for screening. You're getting a colonoscopy in case you have polyps, and then if they find a polyp, that's going to cost money. Obamacare doesn't cover that. And so you really need to read the fine print. You probably have to read the fine print of Obamacare. But, my advice to pregnant women, I love midwives, by the way. This is not a reflection on midwifery. I think midwives are amazing, and I think they're fantastic. However, I'm sorry if it seems old school, but traveling internationally your third trimester is not usually encouraged. And, for somebody like me, I had to have frequent ultrasounds. How am I going to do that overseas? And I understand they said, well, it's her first pregnancy and she's fine. That's kind of a one of the what do I call it? What do you call it when it kind of I don't want to say the term that most people use, but just because you never had a problem before, like my father, he said I was never sick a day in my life. I was never sick. Well, then he died of a heart attack. So not having a pregnancy before doesn't necessarily mean this pregnancy is going to be perfectly fine. We kind of need to know what happened previously. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Don't go away.
Looking for an easy read that can actually help secure someone's future? Pick up a copy of Mark Falter's book, Common Sense Income Strategies. For the past 30-plus years, Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. It's not rocket science, it's a pretty easy read. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. Common Sense Income Strategies is available now on Amazon or by calling 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Common Sense Income Strategies by financial fitness show host Mark Falter. Secure your financial future today.